All right, what is happening, everybody? We're back. We're doing some mountain bike news. We haven't talked about mountain biking in a while, but I thought it was a time. Something interesting came up recently with all the male athletes in Rotorua striking the event and not participating. Now, Emil Johansson posted up a thing recently saying they were all going to stand together and no one was going to ride, and they all signed the thing. And I looked a bit more into it, just going off the fact that in the downhill last year, we talked about this a lot at the riders' meetings about whether that would be a good idea to strike when our needs weren't being met, when our demands or our suggestions were kind of falling on deaf ears. And we got to the point where we thought, hey, do we just have a strike at a World Cup, or at least threaten the idea of a strike? And it never came to that, but it's been interesting to see that the slopestyle guys have done that. Now, looking at the demands, it looks like they wanted to demand €2,000 for an appearance fee. They wanted to increase their prize money and also get accommodation paid for, like hotels and motels and whatnot, and also change the scheduling for the event to earlier in the day so it was less likely to have wind. So they had two of those wants addressed, but they wouldn't do an appearance fee of the €2,000. Now, it's hard to say, especially now where mountain biking is as a whole in the industry, if people don't have as much money as they have previously. So it's probably not the good time to push for more money just to show up. But I also read in Emil's post that a big thing was safety. Now, they didn't mention anything in the press conference about safety. That was never the issue. I guess the early in the afternoon thing for wind, it could be, but if it's windy, they normally just call it off anyway. But also they were saying that in the event village that the staff get food catered for, but the athletes don't. And going off my own experience at World Cups, I feel like the riders, which are the main show, don't get looked after to the extent they could be. And I understand you need all the wheels to roll in the right direction for it to work, and that's not taking away from any of the organisers, any of the volunteers, any of those people. But it does frustrate me when you put in all this work and effort to get over there, and then you're kind of put second to people that are kind of could be a volunteer off the street that comes to just watch them. They just want to watch the race, but yet they will get food catered for them, but athletes won't. Now, a lot of the time at the World Cups, that doesn't matter so much because we have a team, but I know a lot of the time for these Crankworx slopestyle athletes, they've kind of come over. They don't have a big team around them. They're kind of doing their own thing, and I think they feel kind of left out. And I can understand that if you're the draw card for Crankworx and you get the most views, you bring in the most eyes, you bring in the most revenue for ads, why are you treated in a way that seems less than a volunteer that's at the same event? So it's actually going to be super interesting to see if change is made. I just watched the press I can't say press conference. Wow, I need to stop saying that. Anyway, I just watched it and it seemed quite awkward between the organisers and when you're watching something and you're like, I don't know if they actually have sorted any of this out. Obviously, they didn't compete. The women did compete. But Rogatkin was there and you can tell everyone seemed a little bit on edge. So I don't know if they've kind of come to any kind of conclusion. Obviously, they didn't compete. It's going to be interesting to see how that actually affects the whole of Crankworx and the athletes going forward, and whether this will be resolved and they will actually kind of find a middle ground or will pay that money. But it's just interesting going back to the World Cups and whether this works, whether the World Cup guys might do this if they get put in a situation where they don't feel heard or seen. And I think that's been the biggest thing at World Cups is we just don't feel seen or heard and we just get put to the side. And I remember being at a riders meeting and we talked about having a strike, and then a few riders, I'm not going to name names, said, you say this, but on the day, if you can ride, you're going to ride. And that was one of the hard things about being in like the riders union/group, was I didn't feel like we were all united. And I felt like if people had the chance to do something, they would take it and they wouldn't be kind of united as one. And I think when that is the case, it's hard for change to happen, because there will always be outliers that will stand out and do what they feel is best for them, not the group and the sport as a whole. And again, I'm not holding that against people. I understand people need to make money, people need to keep sponsors, people need to live their lives. But I think when it comes to change, and especially serious change, that you need to unite and you need to actually work as a whole, not as all these individuals, because I think that's what's been happening for too long, and nothing actually happens in the way of making it better for the athletes. I think we suffer in those occasions. Now, in saying that, there has been some good change made, but I think it's change made without really consulting us. It's just change that's made, and it can make it tricky. But like I said, it's going to be super interesting moving forward where they go with this now, and whether it actually does alter how Crankworx obviously runs their events, and also how the riders show up, and whether they will show up and be paid for being there, get hotels, and get the schedule changed. But yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting moving forward, and see how the Crankworx series recovers from this and goes forward. But yeah, super interesting point that I thought I would touch on, just the fact that I felt like we dealt with this all year at the World Cups, but we never actually pulled the trigger on not racing. But I wonder if that would have made a pretty dramatic effect on how people would have viewed what was happening, whether that amount of noise around it would have made actual change. But yeah, a few other bits before we go. Pretty sure Jackson Goldstone is currently recovering from an ACL crash in hardline that was taken up by Ronan Dunn. He's looking fast as hell at the moment. I think he's going to be really good this year. I think he just needs to stay consistent, not go too over his head, ride within himself. But even when I watched him at hardline, he didn't look like he was getting out of shape at all. Like, he does some loose stuff in practice, but I feel like he tightened up a lot in the race, so that was cool to see. Bernard Kerr managed to snap his bike in half at the Crankworx downhill, which that was something you want to do, especially on live TV around the world. That's definitely not a good look, but testing out the prototype bike, and yeah, it looks like it's pulled apart through where the carbon goes into the alloy. So yeah, he's somehow okay. It looked pretty nasty from what I saw on TV. And they've just raced in Tennessee, which Dakota Norton ended up taking out. Asa Vermette has crashed as well. Apparently he's okay, but a little bit beat up. Again, I think Asa is going to be one to watch. I think he's going to... I watched him at Snowshoe before my crash, and you know when you see someone ride in person and how smooth and consistent they are, you go, oh, okay, you're going to be good, especially riding that track that was just absolutely treacherous. So I think he's going to be one to watch out for. And yeah, I want to try and do a little bit more downhill stuff, or like touch on things. I've been staying away from the whole downhill world for a little bit. I've obviously been invested in it for so long. I haven't ridden a downhill bike yet, or mountain bike in general, so kind of got a little bit of itch the other day. So whether that will need scratching or not is another thing. But I've got some exciting news possibly coming up with possibly riding for a new brand. But also the back of my mind whether I kind of want to go down that road and get back into the scene of mountain biking, or just keep doing what I'm doing. So yeah, all up in the air, but there's been some cool things floating around. But yeah, I thought I'd just touch on this Crankworx thing, because it's something that obviously affected my life pretty heavily last year, with the whole event organisers and riders kind of clashing a lot of the time. I've made myself quite vocal about it all. And yeah, it's interesting to see it happening now, but probably just not the best time to be asking for money when the industry is in such a tough spot. But hey, if you don't do it now, you might never do it. Anyway, thanks guys, and I'll try and do more of these for you. If you liked it, let me know. If not, let me know.